A crane lifts a fully finished apartment the size of a shipping container into position. Another follows, then another. Workers bolt them together like giant Lego blocks, connecting plumbing, wiring, and air conditioning as each module locks into place. 4 days later, 150 apartments stand, where there was nothing. Finished units, tiles on the floor, toilets in the bathroom, lights that turn on. This is not a concept, not a prototype, not a rendered animation from a tech conference. It already happened in Abu Dhabi, and the company that pulled it off is now planning to ship the entire factory that made it possible to the Middle East, so they can do it there permanently. The construction industry spent 15 years calling this company's projects stunts. Nobody is calling them stunts anymore. They are placing orders. Version 1.0, a 30-story hotel in 15 days. The company is called Broad. And the story starts in 2011 with a building called the T30. Broad assembled a fully finished 30-story hotel in 15 days in central China. Not a structural shell waiting for fit-out. A completed building, insulation, plumbing, electricity, air conditioning, all installed before the modules ever touched the construction site. The building was 93% prefabricated. Only 7% of the work happened on location. The world watched a time-lapse video and did not know what to make of it. Some called it a gimmick. Others questioned whether a building assembled that fast could possibly be safe. Construction industry veterans dismissed it as a one-time spectacle, built under controlled conditions that would never scale. Broad ignored all of it and kept building. 3 years later, they stacked a 57-story skyscraper in 19 days. They called it Mini Sky City. It rose 204 meters into the air at a rate of 3 floors per day. 800 apartments. Workspace for 4,000 people. 1,200 workers assembled it using the same modular system, just scaled up. Then came the number that made the entire construction industry go quiet. A 10-story apartment building assembled in 28 hours and 45 minutes. 3 cranes. 1 continuous shift. A building that would have taken conventional construction 6 to 8 months stood complete before the end of the second day. The pace was no longer impressive. It was unsettling. The moment the argument shifted. By early 2024, Broad completed a 26-story residential tower in 5 days. 200 apartments. 14,000 square meters of floor space. Every single unit delivered move-in ready, water, electricity, and air conditioning fully operational. 5 days from the first module hoisted by crane to the last one locked into position. This was not a shell waiting for finishing work. This was a completed building. Traditional high-rise construction takes 18 to 24 months for a building of that size. Broad did it in less than a week. On a real construction site. With real materials. Under real conditions. That was the moment the conversation stopped being about whether the technology worked and started being about what it meant for everyone else. The secret is that there barely is a construction site. The speed is not coming from faster workers or better cranes on the construction site. The speed is coming from the fact that by the time anything reaches the construction site, the building is already almost finished. Broad's modules are manufactured on robotic assembly lines inside a factory in central China. Each module is a finished apartment segment roughly the size of a standard shipping container. When it leaves the production line, it is 90% complete. Tiles are laid. Toilets are installed. Wiring is run. Plumbing is connected. Paint is dry. The factory uses Foxconn-style robotic manufacturing adapted for construction. It currently produces 27 million square feet of building per year. That is roughly 84,000 housing units annually, an entire city's worth of housing rolling off a production line like cars off an assembly line. What happens on the construction site is not building, it is assembly. Cranes lift the modules into position. Workers bolt the structural connections. Crews hook up the interface points between modules. That is why a 26-story tower takes 5 days instead of 20 months. The building is not being constructed. It is being plugged together. the order that changed everything. MR Group is the developer that built the Burj Khalifa, the tallest structure on the planet. When the people who engineered the world's most ambitious skyscraper want to see what you are doing, you have arrived. MR's associated property company, Eagle Hills, flew executives to central China, walked through Broad's factory, watched the robotic assembly lines produce finished apartment modules, and placed an order. 259 modules, 150 residential units, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Manufactured in China, loaded onto ships, and sent 6,000 kilometers across the ocean to Abu Dhabi. This was not a test project, not a pilot program. It was a commercial transaction. A Middle Eastern developer, one that has built the tallest building on Earth, looked at the fastest construction system on the planet and decided it was ready for the Gulf. The factory produced all 259 modules in 30 days. They shipped in October 2025 and arrived in Abu Dhabi 20 days later. When the cargo reached the site, cranes went to work. Module by module, floor by floor, the building rose. 96 hours after the first crane lifted the first module, the entire 150-unit residential building was standing. They named it Earth Tower. 16 stories. 168,000 square feet of residential space. Assembled in the time it takes most conventional projects just to pour the foundation. The project was valued at 125 million RMB. It marked the first time Chinese prefabricated buildings entered the Middle East market. It also won the CES 2026 Speed Award for Smart Living, a prize that is normally given to consumer electronics, not construction companies. That single fact tells you everything about how the world is now categorizing what Broad does. It is no longer construction. It is product manufacturing at architectural scale. Why the West cannot match this? In the United States, a standard apartment building of 150 units takes 14 to 20 months to complete from groundbreaking to occupancy. In the United Kingdom, the average new housing development takes over 2 years. In both countries, housing shortages are at crisis levels. Construction costs have surged, and skilled labor is increasingly difficult to find. The fundamental problem is that Western construction is still largely hand-built on site, the same basic methodology used for centuries, just with better power tools. Every building starts from scratch. Every site is a new factory that has to be set up, staffed, and broken down again. Weather delays, labor disputes, supply chain problems, and coordination failures eat into timelines on every single project. Broad's system eliminates most of those variables entirely. The factory runs regardless of weather. Robots do not go on strike. Supply chains are managed centrally. Quality is consistent because the same machines produce every module to the same standard, every single time. A housing crisis is ultimately a production problem. And production problems are solved by factories, not construction sites. China figured that out. The West is still debating planning permissions. Broad is not planning to keep shipping from China. The next step is not to keep sending finished modules across oceans. The next step is to ship the factory itself. Broad is working on plans to establish local production facilities in the way. Entire modular assembly lines operating inside the Middle East rather than manufacturing everything in China and shipping it 6,000 kilometers by sea. The logic is straightforward. Shipping modules across oceans works, but it adds cost and time. Local factories eliminate both. Broad's stated goal is 70 production lines worldwide by 2030, producing 200 million square meters of buildings annually. They are not trying to be the fastest builder in China. They are trying to replace how the entire world builds. And they are not alone. Check, the largest construction company on Earth by revenue, just became the first Chinese enterprise to receive Dubai's in-principle pre-approval for modular integrated construction. That approval covers low-rise and mid-rise buildings and opens the door to a market that desperately needs faster housing. Seachek's modular brand, called Home Magic, is targeting 50,000 housing units per year for Belt and Road countries. 50,000 units per year from a single company's modular division. Dubai is not an accidental target. The Gulf states are pouring trillions into infrastructure and housing and cannot build fast enough with conventional methods. Modular construction solves the labor shortage, the timeline problem, and the cost problem simultaneously. When the world's largest construction company and the world's fastest modular builder are both targeting the same market at the same time, that market is about to change permanently. The industrialization of construction. In 2025, China exported $4.34 billion worth of prefabricated buildings. That figure represents a 42% increase in exports to Gulf markets alone over the previous year. China is no longer just building apartments faster than anyone else. It is exporting the industrial system that makes it possible. What Broad and SEC are doing is not a construction story. It is an industrialization story. Construction has been one of the last major industries to resist the shift from hand-built to factory-built. Cars went through that transition 100 years ago. Electronics went through it 50 years ago. Clothing went through it even earlier. Buildings are going through it now. And China is not just participating in that shift. It is leading it, funding it, exporting it, and building the factories on every continent that will make conventional construction look as outdated as hand-sewing a shirt. 15 years ago, a Chinese company stacked a 30-story hotel in 15 days, and the world laughed. The people who laughed are now flying to central China to walk through the factory and place orders. Subscribe and hit the bell. Drop in the comments if your city could get 150 apartments built in 4 days using this system. What would that actually change about the housing crisis where you live?